Escape from Tarkov now has a PVE co-op mode you can play with friends with progression through the quests and storyline, along with that progression not being reset by wipes. So this should have been a video of celebration. This is a much requested feature, and to me, I'm going to play it a ton. However, there is a lot of problems. First of all, the mode itself is very undercooked, and I don't know how much support it will actually get. You also need to matchmake, even if you're playing solo, to jump into it, which can take 5 to 10 minutes. So, it's giving you the full Tarkov experience, but why are they using dedicated servers for what should be an offline mode that your friends connect to you to play, and the save should simply be cloud-based? So let's jump into this because, of course, the controversy has exploded. We're not going to go too far into the controversy, as this video is very much focused on PvE elements and whether, of course, they're worth buying. So the new PvE option, which has been much requested by the player base, is a new button within the main menu. It takes you to a unique stash just for your PvE character, and you can progress through your tasks and your quests and your storyline with that character, or of course with friends as well. And the missions you jump into are exactly the same as normal raids. They even have PMCs who are played by AI, although this is one of the parts that's actually very much undercooked, which we'll get into shortly. But before that, this is a very big U-turn from the developers of Escape from Tarkov, because they said they would think about doing a single player version or PvE version with co-op in the future after the 1.0 release, maybe as some sort of DLC or something like that future down the road. But then bam, out of nowhere we get this PvE co-op that's been added in with the 250 new edition of the game. And that is, of course, a surprise. My thinking here is this is some sort of reaction to successes of Helldivers, perhaps. They've gone, oh my god, there's actually a huge audience who would love to play PvE. Maybe we should at least give that audience a chance if they want to jump in and play that with our game. Or they're possibly worried about Grey Zone Warfare, which is coming out relatively soon, and so far has been getting a lot of praise. Now, it's not really a competitor to Tarkov, it's more like, I would say, a Ghost Recon type game, but it'll have its own PvE option that, of course, Tarkov doesn't have. So I do wonder if this is just a reaction to some of that stuff, because this has just come out of nowhere, this PvE co-op mode, and even if this wasn't in the list of all the stuff for the new edition, I don't think anyone would have batted an eyelid. So this is very unusual change in tactic here. However, this also gives the impression that this mode has been rushed, as it does have AI PMCs within these raids that are required for the tasks and raids that you'll need to do to progress through the story, and those are just raider characters with raider loot. They are not PMCs, and this is weird because of course you have the cosmetics, you could just make them look like PMCs, and you could give them probably quite a simple randomized loadout based on even just take what is kind of the average of what users in the game actually use and chuck that on players, and you probably end up with a pretty good setup. You could even just duplicate randomly loadouts from characters that are human players, what they've actually got in their loadout, and then replicate that. So it very much seems like a mode that hasn't had much time put into it. It seems like somebody has pushed out real quick to just get it in here. And the other thing is it uses dedicated servers, which means you need to queue for about 5 to 10 minutes before you can get into a game by yourself. Of course, that should all be done locally, with only the cloud save actually having to be sent off to the servers so that your save is secure. It doesn't matter if you're playing this PvE only thing on your servers or a dedicated server. So it should be done all locally. That also means it's cheaper for the developers. So very unusual. There's also a third-party mod for Tarkov that makes it into a single-player game. So we know that it's extremely possible to do stuff like that. And this unofficial mod at this moment in time is actually far superior than the official version, which you can only get for $250. There's also some other issues, which is to do with the EOD version of the game, which I own. This was a special edition of the game that you gave Tarkov developers a bunch of money, and they promised you a whole bunch of DLC in the future, but of course, if the game failed, you would never get that DLC. And it was obviously you invested in the company to help them produce their game, and then hopefully you'd get a bunch of free stuff if they were successful. And they make around about 200 to 300 million in revenue per year. So it's safe to say this game has been successful, but it's also been in early access for almost a decade. And they also really screwed themselves, because the language they used in that edition was that you would get all subsequent DLCs. Whereas if they had said you get DLCs and listed like 4 random names, they could have attached that name to anything they wanted in the future and got that kind of promise out. Whereas they just said all DLCs. And of course, DLC stands for downloadable content, which is everything in a computer game. But the players of AOD have been quite nice. They haven't asked for all the cosmetics that they've been getting released as separate purchases and stuff like that. They've only been looking for the features. And this is, of course, infuriated the current player base in a way that I've never seen with Tarkov. It is quite literally on fire right now. But to me, there's also a bigger problem, which is the EOD also had its own co-op version of the game that you could jump in and play off. But this version has no progression. And the problem is they sell this additional co-op thing as a separate little purchase. I think it's about $10 or something like that. And the crazy thing is, if you're a brand new player and you think, oh my god, Tarkov now has a PvE mode, I want to go try it out, and you buy, let's say, the standard edition of the game, and then you think, oh, I can just buy this additional little thing that gives me co-op. No, it's a different co-op. So it's like, why is there two co-op modes in Tarkov? Why is the newer one not just superseding the older one, which would have been a far smarter idea and would have just upgraded that to a better PvE option that people could enjoy. So right now it seems to be dumb as hell all around. Now there has been an initial response now about 24 hours after the launch of this new edition where they have said that they're going to give the EOD players access to the PvE mode for 6 months. So they're giving a downloadable content feature to the people that should be getting all downloadable content for free for 6 months now, and it is very unusual. Now I do plan to jump in and try out this PvE mode with my friends and just have a good mess around. I'm not buying the additional extremely expensive version of the game, so if it's only available for 6 months, I'll play it for 6 months and that'll be it. But I would recommend, of course, do not put any money into Tarkov at this moment in time. They have really gone and set their whole player base and quite possibly the entire game on fire, especially when we're just on the cusp of things like Grey Zone Warfare coming out and many other extraction sewers that are just about to launch. This is an extremely weird thing for the Tarkov devs to do at this moment in time, and it's also the worst time for them to decide to do this. Crazy. Now let's talk about the good side, the PvE elements. I'm hoping this will be a mode that gets updates, so improved AI, duplication of PMC's loadouts so that it feels like you're up against real players, and better AI, and also more varied AI. It'd be good to see a PMC in terrible gear running around and he acts like he's a noob at the game, and then if you see a high geared operator, then you're like, oh yeah, that's a like really high skilled AI. That'd be kind of good to have those kind of variations. I don't know if it's going to get that kind of support. We'll have to see going forward. But this is great news for people who want to play Tarkov but are not interested in PvP. And there is a huge audience. See Helldivers, massive success, game as a service setup, and it is still going and making a lot of money, and players are still playing it tons to this day, even a long time after launch. So Tarkov has a lot of potential money to be made here with this PvE audience, but they need to take it and turn the servers local so that you don't have to join a dedicated server, you don't have to matchmake, you can just jump into a local game, your friends join you, and you have a blast. And that should be easy to do. We've seen it done with the single player mod. It is 100% doable by the developers if they decide to, of course, support this mode. But I would certainly not buy this now while it is in the top tier edition of the game worth $250. It is not a purchase you should make for the PvE, and the PvE may not get supported in the future. I've also got some personal worries here as well, and that is down to the timing of all of this. Tarkov is expected to launch with a 1.0 release this year. So why release a new edition now? Presumably, you would say, right, Tarkov is going to be launching in, let's say, 3 months' time as a 1.0 release. Here's a brand new edition of the game, a celebration to bring us to the 1.0 release. If you want to buy this more expensive version, you can. And here's a bunch of like cosmetics or unique things you can get in it that you can't get in other editions. And you know, you don't have to actually put much in the way of gameplay stuff in there. It does look like the Tarkov developers think they need to put pay to win stuff into these expensive editions to sell them. So again, why is this edition coming out now? Do they have a money problem? We know they're making 200 to 300 million every single year. So what is going on? Are they absolutely pissing that money away? And the other thing is they are based in the UK, right? That's where all their money is stored and where their business is incorporated. So they are open to getting sued. And their wording for their EOD version was very clear, all DLCs. And any court is just going to read that as downloadable content, which is quite literally everything. So they're going to have an issue fighting that in court if one crazy person with a bunch of money decides to sue them. And it only takes one to do that. But the bigger picture for me is, are they running out of money? Are they going to go bankrupt and the servers get shut down in the future and Tarkov will just disappear? Because it seems like it shouldn't, but this also seems like a very desperate move that they've made. And like I say, the timing is very unusual. They're about to go to a 1.0 release. Presumably that would be the best time for another edition of the game. Talking about another edition of the game, they have now said they're going to give the EOD owners a whole bunch of stuff. And a lot of this stuff is terrible in a gameplay way. As they've said, to make up for this, they're going to give a few special features to, and this is only a few I'm going to list off, these are the worst ones. They're going to give the EOD owners priority matchmaking. Now this is horrendous. Like giving one set of players faster matchmaking? Weird, terrible, and absolutely crazy. But this is also going to be a limited time thing of 6 months. I think you can almost guarantee that these kind of crazy features are going to show up in a brand new, more expensive edition at some point in the future, probably again before the actual 1.0 launch of the game. The developers have also said that the PVE option is not downloadable content, it is a new feature. Now that means that in the future, they can just add these pieces of content to new editions and always just say, hey, this is not an additional piece of content, it is a feature. Whether it's a map, a quest line, or an absolute crazy amount of anything, they can always just say, oh, it's just a feature, not part of what we actually owe the EOD owners. And of course, that hopefully means that people will stop buying these extremely expensive editions of Tarkov, especially with this brand new edition, the $250 one, being more expensive than the original EOD, which used to be the top end, was the limited time one. This new one, that's $250, has exactly the same promise, saying that all DLCs will be given to the owners of this game. When in fact we've already seen that the lower tier one with exactly the same promise that was limited edition doesn't give you those things in the future, and we know the developers could just say, hey, this is a feature, not actually downloadable content. So yeah, long story short, I am going to be trying out this PvE mode as it is coming to the EOD version for 6 months, so I'll jump in, I'll play it. I also want to see if they do any kind of improvements over that 6 months. They might also backtrack at some point and give it to everybody for all players, and hopefully make it local so you don't have to join a dedicated server and matchmake. Hopefully all of that will end up happening, but I'm going to jump in, play this with friends, have a good mess around with it, see how it plays, and we'll see if they do actually manage to do anything. I would recommend though, if you're looking for a game like Tarkov that you can play PvE based, I think Grey Zone Warfare right now seems to be the best option when it launches, and it is going to launch probably relatively soon. But be warned, Grey Zone Warfare is a deliberately slower game, and it will be much more walking around, taking your time, whereas Tarkov, other than the 5 to 10 minutes you spend matchmaking, can get you into combat relatively quickly, depending on the map you choose. Anyway guys, this should have been a relatively happy video to make about getting a PvE mode in Tarkov that I am extremely excited for. I love the PvP, but I'm definitely going to try and play quite a lot of PvE with my mates. And fingers crossed it works relatively well, and I will at least be getting it for 6 months, so I'm willing to try it out and hopefully make a couple of videos about it. But anyway guys, thanks for watching, I'll catch you next time.